Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of The Archive, taking a look back at my over-the-board games from my whole career. So this first episode is going to cover the oldest game that I have. This was not my first tournament, but it was close to it. My first tournament was the 2007 Tri-State Junior Open. Took place in January of that year, so I was right around 14 years old. Probably 8th grade, and I was put into the beginner section, so that was unrated players and players up into a 550 rating USCF, and that tournament went quite well. I tied for third and went 3.5 out of 4, so I felt pretty good about myself, and I've been playing chess for a while casually with friends at home, even some school clubs, but that was my first over-the-board tournament. I unfortunately do not have any recorded games from that tournament, even though I do remember some of the tournament and I remember some of the players. The games themselves got lost. It was my first tournament, didn't have a tournament notebook to keep it in, and so those, as far as I know, are lost to time. However, this next game we're going to take a look at is from my first round in my second ever tournament. This was the 2007 Northern Regional Championship. It was a scholastic tournament in April of 2007, so 3 months after my first tournament, and I was playing Buuch. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but she was a couple years older than me, and she was rated right around 1,041 USCF. And after my first tournament, I was rated 1,008 USCF. So a relatively high scholastic rating, and I was put in the premier section. So that was a section for players in the Pittsburgh area, 1,000 to 1,200. So the second to top section. The championship section above that was 1,200 and up. So I don't remember going to this tournament or where it was, but I do remember that this game took place at one of the tables on the right side of the cafeteria, just inside the door. And so we were at one of the closest tables to the door from the hallway, so there's a little bit of noise. Didn't bother me at the time, but reflecting on it, I can remember that. It was a game in 30, straight up. I don't think there was any delay or increment, but 30 minutes is tons of time for a scholastic player. So let's jump into this. I had the black pieces, and my opponent played e4. I played e5, so anyone that knows my games now knows that it's very rare for me to play e5, but at this point, it was all I knew. I just knew all of the basics, didn't really know openings that well. I knew some of the names, but none of the theory. Knight f3, knight c6, and my opponent played the 4 knights, so nothing super aggressive, but as you'll see in this game, I had no idea how to handle it, even at this point. So we're playing symmetrically, and I played d6, I castle, and my opponent played the move h3. So the reason they played h3 was to prevent the move bishop g4, which would pin their knight. I was aware I needed to develop my pieces, and so I played the move bishop to d7. And we'll see soon that bishop to d7 isn't the best square for that bishop. A more natural square would be bishop to e6, avoiding some of the tactics that happened in the game. So they played bishop g5, a move I did not prevent. I jumped my knight in. As a lot of beginner players do, I was facing someone stronger and felt like I should exchange pieces. Almost always a mistake. You want to keep complications on the board. It's going to give you the best chances to beat that tougher player. So they exchanged, and they jumped their knight into d5. This is the move I failed to prevent. They're piling up on the pin, so they're attacking my knight on f6, and my knight cannot capture due to the loss of my queen if I move that knight. And so my knight is under attack twice, and the best case scenario is that my king is no longer going to have a nice wall to the castle. My king is going to become exposed. So I counterattacked with b5, attacking their bishop, and they counterattacked, attacking my bishop. And so there's a lot of tension going on in this game. My knight is under attack twice. I'm attacking their bishop. They're attacking my bishop. But we can see that most of that pressure is from white on my pieces, and I really do not have very many threats. I captured their bishop, they captured mine, and I wanted to relieve all of the tension on f6 before they could build up further with a move like queen f3. So they captured, and we can see that I now have all of these pawns, but they're very weak. 3 separate pawn islands to white's 2 pawn islands. So if you don't know what a pawn island is, it's just any group of pawns that are on adjacent files. So h6 is a pawn island because there are no pawns on adjacent files. All of these pawns are a pawn island because they're all on adjacent files. And then finally, a7 would be a third pawn island. The more pawn islands you have, the weaker your structure is. And they captured on e5. I undoubled my pawns, and they captured on c4. And we reach this position where I am down a pawn, and their knight is on a nice outpost square. I activate my queen, and we're going to go a little bit quickly through some of these moves. I try and kick their knight, and they go ahead and they fork me, a move that I clearly did not expect at the time. I do not remember this particular move happening in the game. I do remember I was sitting facing the door, but don't remember that fork. Now I'm down a piece, and I save my rook. My opponent, being up material, chooses to trade off queens. And so in this position, white can really trade off queens or not trade off queens. They're both going to be good because they are on the attack, and I am the one down in material. My only threat, though, is the attack down the g file, so they shut that down with the queen trade, attacking the queen and my king, and I can't save both of them. So I'm forced to trade queens, and we reach this position here, where their knight is going to proceed to jump around the board. Now, some point right in here, I don't remember the exact move, but I remember that her younger brother walked up to the board asking if she was done yet. He was much younger, and I remember that clearly, and her shooing him away, and him sitting down at the end of the table. And he was asking if she had won or what was going on, and she was very respectful about it and made sure that he did not disrupt the game. So I remember that distinctively. In these scholastic tournaments, you can get a lot of distractions, but I thought that was handled well. Here we can see that I have 2 pawns under attack, and I went ahead and guarded them both, but I could not save all my pawns. So way back when, we talked about those pawn islands, and all of those weak pawns came to be a problem. My rooks were not able to guard all of those weaknesses, especially with my king unable to help, and me not having a knight or bishop to help. So we continue here, and my opponent has skillfully gotten their rook involved. You can see that my rooks are going to become rather passive in defense. When we talk about having passive pieces, we mean pieces that are only having a defensive role with no chance to counterattack or create threats. And so in this position, while my rooks are doing something, they are not doing anything that's going to help me win the game. There's no way for them to create threats or turn the tide of this game. So it's just a matter of waiting for my demise. And we can see that my opponent activates their second rook, and I'm just kind of moving around here, trying not to get checkmated. But unfortunately, rook e8 is a blunder. So I will give you a second to find the checkmate in this position for white. And that's all the time you should need. Boom, checkmate. Rook right in front of the king. My king cannot capture the rook because it is defended. My king cannot run away. No way to block. No way to capture. That is the end of the game. And right there was my first over-the-board rated loss in my chess career. I'm now over 2,000 USCF, but I had a lot of losses on the way, and this was the first one. She went on to have a pretty good tournament. I will be covering the future games I played in this tournament, but I did get my revenge many years later. So when I went to college as a freshman, I stumbled upon the chess club, one of my nights there the first semester, and the professor introduced me to this girl a couple years older and said, why don't you play this person? And I recognized her name and I said, oh, do you remember the game that we played way back when your brother interrupted the game, you checkmated me? And she said, no. But I did win that game, and I went on to be the president of the chess club in college. So we will cover a lot of those games in the future. But this was the start of the archive, my first over-the-board loss, and the first game in my second ever rated tournament. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to be going through these in order to try and give you guys a lot of lessons, starting with games where common mistakes are made, easy mistakes are made, and building up to more strategic and complicated games as we go. So this was round one, my first loss. I will see you guys next time. Good luck in your games.